What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and it's closing thoughts times for 10 ticket modern mono white goats. This kind of amalgamation of goats and devotion and Thalia's Lancer legendary tutor, and then also Flicker Wisp that I made. Time to talk about the good and the bad. We went 3-2, which isn't terrible. I think it was fine. It did feel like we were weak against a lot of decks. I think we lucked out with the 3-2 and that we ran into a lot of non-high tier decks. I mean, we ran into some high tier decks too, but mostly we did not run into the super high tier decks. So what was the good and the bad? Well, the things I chose for X's were Boros Reckoner. I actually think this might have been the weakest X. He's really good and he gives you a lot of devotion, but he doesn't do that much on his own in terms of what the deck wants to do. Like, he's just really good in there for the 3 white pips and for being like a reasonable blocker to slow down aggro. He was fine. It just felt like sometimes we played him and he got removed instantly and he didn't end up doing that much. Springback Pasture is a hard one to give an X to because it both won us a few games and cost us a few games. Saying it cost us a few games is a little extreme, but I'm not sure how much better it would have been than just a Plains. We only made goats once or twice with it, and there was one time we sacked a whole lot of goats to immediately tutor for and play Elishnorn, and it was super epic in that instance. That was in the first match we played. That was absolutely amazing, and definitely should have land can be powerful. But even just running a 4th Nykthos might be better than running the Springback Pasture. So that's the reason I give it the X. Again, not like a super strong X. There's nothing in the deck in general that I look at and think is like super bad, but that's one of the X's. And then Cloud Shift, it does work pretty well with the deck, but there were also a lot of times the deck is mana hungry enough that it's hard to hold up, and there are a few times it would have been useful and I just couldn't really play it. And so I often felt like, especially against controlling decks, they got stuck in hand and my opponent just like wiped my board or removed all my creatures one at a time at times where I couldn't play it. Might be too hard unless we ran a few less colorless lands. I'm not sure. I didn't feel good with it. So those were the X's. Those are the ones I didn't feel good with. And then the check marks, the ones that I felt won us the most games. I mean, Springback Shepherd, I think, legitimately won us the most games in the deck. I was a little worried that the goats would be overshadowed by the fact that I had the Thalia's Lancer package in there, which was also very good. But I definitely think Springback Shepherd was the reason for more of our wins than anything else. We did just occasionally have weenie beats as well. But yeah, Springback Shepherd came through a lot of cases. Elishnorn is just the most playable Lancer target we have and works super well with Springback Shepherd, so I thought that was really good. And then finally, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. Just, it sucks when you're not doing well. There were certainly times you played it and you're like, well, it's no better than a Plains, but it's really rarely worse than a Plains and occasionally really good, you know. So it's the thing that gives you the power to play Elishnorn a couple turns early and really take over the game. So that's my breakdown. Overall, I was relatively happy with the deck, but I also felt like it had a bunch of problems. I don't know if this was an ideal build. I'm going to get into some of that on the next page when I talk about potential upgrades. I definitely felt like we had a lot of trouble against aggro, and it's a little hard against control decks too, because we were kind of playing this weenie go wide strategy where sweepers would just get us pretty bad. And we also needed to keep white pips out to power up our Nykthos, which could be hard if we were playing against some kind of mid-rangey deck that could just kill our guys really fast. So the deck was okay. It was certainly a lot of fun to play. I enjoyed it a lot, but I don't know how good it was. And then I want to talk about some upgrades, basically going from left to right along the bottom here. One, the deck really didn't have any interaction. Sometimes that didn't matter, but we definitely got blown out by a few combo decks, like the Mind Crank combo deck. Any deck with a reasonable amount of interaction, especially instant speed interaction, should have been able to beat, and we just didn't have that instant speed interaction that we needed, and that cost us the game, basically. I think Path to Exiles are the obvious choice. Instant speed, exile a creature. It would help a lot against those aggro matchups, too, where we might normally struggle a little bit. A lot of these White Devotion decks run 4 Leyline of Sanctity in the main board. I think that's not a bad idea. It powers up Nykthos really fast, especially if we went up to 4 Nykthos. It starts to feel like a smart thing to do. It doesn't do that much in the main board is the only problem. I mean, 100% they should be in the sideboard just because they're good in some matchups, and even when they're not good, they're pretty good. Even when they're not good in a particular matchup, they're pretty good in the deck, so even if they're a little good in the matchup, you might as well bring them in. But I don't know if they're good enough against the whole field to run main board. Like I said, a lot of people, I think, especially who run the Thalia's Lancer type package, do. So they're certainly worth testing with. I don't have them on Magic Online, so I can't even test. But they're pretty expensive on Magic Online as well. So Definitely not a budget option, but a possible thing to put in to improve the deck. And then you can fetch legendary planeswalkers off of Lancers, so definitely makes sense to run at least a couple planeswalkers. Elspeth is probably my primary choice, and she's also just a good threat in a deck that can make a lot of mana anyway and can easily take over a game. She's really good at destroying go tall threats, and really good at powering up your go wide threats, which is what the deck is good at anyway. So she seems like a natural choice in the deck. Again, just a little priced out for us, so that's why we didn't have her in there. But I think she's a good choice. It's possible one of the Gideons would fit in as well. There's some good versions of Gideon. I think if it were me, I would probably err towards the Battle for Zendikar, Gideon ally of Zendikar. That's the one I would probably take, but I'm not sure. And then Brimaz is another good legendary target. I wanted to slip him in there just to note him. I think a lot of other decks played him. Again, a little like we were already pushing it at the 10 ticket mark, so I didn't want to put him in, but he's pretty good. And then obviously there's a lot of sideboard options that we missed out on here. Things like Rest in Peace and Stony Silence that we should be running at least some of. And so those are the big things that I thought were additions. And then I wanted to at least note the another way I saw the deck played was with quite a few border posts, which makes a lot of sense too. It definitely powers up your devotion, basically, and only takes up a land slot. And also gives you something to do. It turns one, so we could cut some of the 1-drops we have. I mean, actually, they could make Weathered Wayfarer even better in a lot of ways, because you're taking your lands off the field if you want to use them to get more lands and kind of thin out your deck. So yeah, I can see border posts working. I didn't get a chance to test them. That's not one that's going to up your budget very much, so I probably should have tested with it before I did the videos and maybe even done them with it. I read some with it, but for some reason I just didn't. The ones I was mostly looking at didn't have that. I'm not convinced they're as good in the kind of deck that I was running, where I wanted to be. I mean, basically, they make the deck even worse against aggro because you're even slower to get creatures out. You don't get those 3-bin inspectors and weathered waivers and things like that out to at least chump block. And those even get pretty big once you play a couple of your Anthem effects. So I wanted to play it the early game more like a weenie creature deck, and that made those feel like less of a good choice. But I don't know. Without having tested them, it could just be that you win more games just by saying, listen, our aggro matchup's always going to be bad. Let's push ourselves to put in devotion that's hard to get rid of. That way we can more reliably hit our super high drops. So I guess that's my thoughts on it. I had a lot of fun playing the deck. I hope you guys had fun watching it. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.